All right, family. IOBA. My name is TC. So I'm gonna get off politics for a while. Anyway, I'm gonna leave them white folks alone because I feel like I gotta jump back in to the diaspora war a little bit. Gotta get back in that because I heard a lady today. I believe they said she was from Liberia, talking about the diaspora war in a way like I ain't never heard anybody talk before. You want to go to war? We can go to war, she said. All the immigrants take a day off, she said. There's more Africans in this country than it is black Americans, she said. She was heated. And I'm thinking to myself, God damn, I ain't been, in the war in this struggle in a minute. I've been fucking with them white folks. So I feel like right now is about time. Right now is about time for me to update my position on the diaspora war that's going on. FBAs versus Caribbeans and Africans and Latinos and everybody else. See, because it's always been African Americans against everybody else. Or everybody else against African Americans. Now, goddamn it, I've talked about this several times, but I'm as Pan-African as it comes. But I'm a black American. And who knows his history? And I'm a black American who's been around long enough to have, directly felt the civil rights movement. And I've seen awakenings happen a bunch of fucking times where, everybody started wearing their red, black, and green and whatnot. I've seen a couple of awakenings like that. I always been, since my Institute of Black Awareness days, that's why y'all hear me say IOBA. That's Institute of Black Awareness. That's a community center that we used to go to and learn about black history. That's where I learned about Marcus Garvey, Huey P. Newton, the Black Panthers, all that. That's where I got indoctrinated, really. That's why I first joined urban drill team. That's why I started at. That's why I look the way I look. So we learned all about black history right there. We had a whole Black History Night and everything. IOBA. That was me. I've been Pan-African a long time. Okay. I had to teach my own self the actual history of Africa and Africans and why it looks the way it looks, and the Berlin Conference and all that shit, and the tribalism and all that. I had to teach myself all of that stuff, because that knowledge is always evolving. But I ain't never heard too many Africans try to teach themselves about the Black American experience, but I'll get to that in a minute. And so I was, growing up in that era. All right, so fast forward a couple years, couple decades or whatever, I started working with African people who immigrated from Africa. And, depending on what part of Africa they came from, they had a different attitude. Now, there was 3 brothers that I worked with up in Syracuse named Michael Okafor. He was from Nigeria. Kiki James, and Lino Ariloka. I'm not sure where Lino came from. They 3 different African brothers. They was up there going to college because Syracuse is a college town. And then there was other African people in the store working. Pretty young girl from Liberia. I forget her name, but anyway. And, I would talk to them. I would talk to them three brothers, and I asked them, why, because there was a lot of Africans coming in the store, and they always had nasty ass attitudes towards black Americans. And I was a front end supervisor. They thought I was managing the store, so they couldn't fuck with me. But they had this attitude, like, especially Nigerians, like they was better than everybody else. They didn't want shit to do with the black Americans other than buy their groceries and leave and make sure I get their money right. But for some reason, because I am who I am and I got a certain thing about me, you know who you can fuck with and who you can't. So that way I was the one you couldn't fuck with. And I always represented myself well. But anyway, like I said, they thought I was the manager. I wore a shirt and tie every day. But they had some nasty ass attitudes and they didn't want to fuck with the black Americans. Now, there was another group of people that worked there. Apparently, the McDonald's up the hill from us had some sort of contract where they was bringing in workers from Jamaica. So it was a bunch of Jamaican women over there working. They'd come in the grocery store, didn't want nothing to do with the black Americans. They fucked with Jamaicans. A bunch of them had husbands at home too, but they fucked with Jamaicans. And I tell y'all why, because I asked. Back then I'm fucking early 40s. So I'm dating, I'm looking around, I'm seeing what's happening. They ain't want nothing to do with the black Americans neither. Matter of fact, the only other ethnic group that would fuck with the black Americans was the Hispanic women from the West Side. Because, we've been living together forever. But the Africans, the Jamaicans, the Haitians, the Indians, nobody wanted the white people. Well, white people, they gonna do what they gonna do. So that shit was about average too. The white people, I'm gonna say, and the Hispanics. But mainly you stuck with your kind. The point is, there was no Pan-Africanism. And trust me, I tried. Lino would say to me, Lino Ariloka, I think he was from, I want to say, Ghana. He said, we say that black Americans are lazy because black Americans don't take advantage of all of the, all of the resources that are here, that opportunity, that was his word. We don't take advantage of the opportunity that, is here in America. And we come here and we blah, 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 blah. So I said to Lino, listen, brother, you don't know our history. And I explained to him our history. I explained to him all of the mechanisms that are in place to keep black Americans where they at. I told him to look up our real history and not what the white folks told him. I schooled his ass. I don't know if I got through to him, but I did. Now Kiki might have been from Ghana also, but Kiki was Kiki James. He was not as, arrogant, I want to say, as Lino. And he didn't say much. And his attitude was a little different. But they respected me because, I was the boss. And then the brother from Nigeria, his name was Michael Okafor. Michael was in town because his parents had a bunch of money. He was going to Syracuse University. His parents had a bunch of money. He was in town, in Syracuse, working, but he was all about the women. He didn't have that nasty ass, he didn't seem to have that nasty ass attitude either, that better than your attitude either. Michael didn't. And he did mess with black American women. So he was a little different. But Kiki, Lino, didn't want nothing to do with black Americans. It's like they told us y'all was all bad or whatever. And they ran into me, and I'm in a managerial position. So they respected me because they used to working for black bosses from home. But the general population, no. There was no getting together. Matter of fact, let me tell you something else. There was two primary African communities in Syracuse. And I forget what countries they were from, but they had two separate organizations. I know because my drill team used to march for them. But they hated each other. There was one group centered on the east side of Syracuse and one group centered on the west side. I got the paperwork in my old notes and everything from where I used to email them back and forth to set up shows. They couldn't stand each other. There's always been tribalism. We, FBA, are a tribe. It's time for us, Black Americans, to let people know we do know who we are. We do know who we are. We know what we went through to get to where we are in this country. We know how we made it possible for other people who look like us to come to this country. So when you get here, you're welcome. Just don't get all goddamn, sedity, as we used to say back in the day. I know they vetted y'all before y'all got here. I know that the average person from Kingston, Jamaica, or the average person from Lagos, Nigeria, or the average person from somewhere in South Africa is more like me than he is different. You see. But when you start getting the top 10% of some people coming into a country and attacking the bottom 20% of the people that live there, well, then that's a problem. You feel me? If you're going to compare yourself to a Black American, if you come from somewhere else, you're going to compare yourself to a Black American. Compare yourself to a Black American who's at the same station in life as you are. And understand that in order for you to even be in America, something good had to happen for you. You had to have some money. Somebody had to send you here. You ain't the average person from where you come from. Because the average person from where you come from can't afford to come to this bitch. And now, this point I'm going to make. Now is not the time for us to be arguing like this. This is fucking stupid. A diaspora war, I mean. When you got fire-breathing rednecks at the motherfucking gate. When you got fire-breathing rednecks at the gate scooping up people, we having a goddamn war about who should be here and who shouldn't. This is not the time to be having that war, having this war. We need to call a motherfucking truce for the next 3 years and figure out how to survive. That's what we need to be doing. Especially if you want to be here in these United States. We having a war. It's like two antelope fighting each other and the lion off in the distance, and they fighting each other and the lion just come in and snatch one of them up. Whoop, whoop. Or kill both of them. As long as we fighting each other, we can't fight our real enemy. You dig me? So I think that the diaspora war should be all that shit that lady was talking about, going to war and boycotting and doctors not taking any Black American patients and all of that bullshit. I'm going to leave that set there. You know what I'm saying? Everybody with two brain cells to rub together and can do a little bit of research can find out what Black Americans had to do and what Black Americans been through at the hands of our government and why things are the way they are. If you're really serious about wondering why, we at our station in life, examine your own culture and your own colonization. Because that's where it came from. Anyway, that's it for now, y'all. I'm going to speak on this a little bit more in my next video. But the diaspora war, now is not the time for that. Hit the like button on your way out. Hit the subscribe button and look for part 2 of this video. I'll talk to y'all later. TC, and I'm out. Peace.